Hey guys, it's Jen, that Catholic gamer. How are you guys doing today? I just wanted to do a quick check-in on how your Lent is going. I kind of feel like I'm failing at Lent this year. Like, big time. But I kind of feel like it's also supposed to be a struggle and it's all about getting closer to Christ. So I think it's okay to be struggling. But yeah, I'm having a hard time this year. Last year, I was like on target. I was doing what I usually do every day. This year, I am so behind. I haven't watched a Dynamic Catholic video since like the third day of Lent. I talked about it before. I do a bunch of different little readings every day. Haven't done them in days. I'm just behind. But I've also decided that I'm not going to stress about it, because in years past I've made myself anxious over the fact that I didn't get everything done that I wanted to. So, I'm working on it. Yeah. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. But I wanted to know how you guys are doing this Lent. Are you doing what you had planned on doing? Are you not? I still am. I'm going to say the rosary almost every day before Mass, and I go to daily Mass almost every day, which helps for sure. It helps to center me and give me a bit more peace than I've had recently. Um, but yeah, I'm struggling. So, how is your Lent going? Are you guys struggling too? Are you doing well? Tell me about it. What else did I want to talk about? This is basically just a catch-up video, a what have you been doing kind of thing. I wasn't going to do a video like this. I had a couple of other things planned, but I felt like I needed to do this today after talking on a couple of live streams about how Lent is hard. It's hard. So I've got wedding prep. I've got pre-Cana on Saturday. I'm kind of excited about that. We'll see how that goes. I'll talk about that at some point too, for sure. And then I wanted to talk about Mass last Sunday. So I got this bright idea, which ended up being a very bright idea. It was a great day. I went to Mass in Latin last Sunday. It was an experience. It was definitely an experience. I immediately felt out of place the second that I walked in the door, because every woman except for myself and my mom, who was with me, and like two other people, were wearing veils. I'm waiting for mine to come. It's not here yet, so obviously I didn't have a veil. My mom had looked at me at one point and said, "I think I need a Kleenex," because they used to put Kleenexes on their heads if they forgot their veils. So, also, well, we dress up for church usually. Like in my family, you don't wear jeans to church. It doesn't matter how often you go, you don't wear jeans to church. So I felt very underdressed. I was wearing nice pants and a sweater. Almost every woman there was wearing a dress. I had thought, hey, maybe you should put on a dress this morning. I didn't. So it was definitely culture shock a little bit. There were a lot of people my age, which I wasn't sure, because I know in the Midwest this is a very big thing. I know that a lot of millennials, people my age and a little bit older, are trying to go back to the more traditional route. But I kind of wondered in my area what that would be like. I kind of figured that it would be more of an older crowd. Nope. I mean, there were some older people there, but there were a lot of young people. A lot of young people. So yeah, it was definitely culture shock. I had no idea what was going on the entire time, which I was well aware that was going to happen. The extraordinary form of the Mass, which is the older one, follows a slightly different format. There are definitely things that are done much differently now. So I'm like trying to follow along in my missal, my daily missal, because it has both the English and the Latin versions, but it doesn't follow the same format. So I was lost the entire time. It was all right though. It was absolutely beautiful. I wish that we incorporated more of the older, more traditional things into Mass in the ordinary form, the newer form. The hymns in Latin were amazing. The choir was awesome. But I had no idea what was going on. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the differences in not so much the format and the like outline of the Mass, but more about what the difference is. There's a lot of debate on how Vatican II was supposed to change the Mass. There's a letter that was, or a part of Vatican II was a letter that was written that talked about the changes that could be made. And they were more to make Mass a community gathering and to get people more involved. But there are some things that people feel it wasn't really supposed to change as much as it did. But we'll just talk about some of the differences. I'm not going to get into that. I don't understand most of it. I know that that some people think that it didn't really say that we were supposed to change the Mass from Latin to whatever language you spoke for all of it. There are people who think that, oh gosh, now my mind's gonna go blank. There are a lot of debate about what was supposed to change and what wasn't. So the extraordinary form of the Mass, the older version, dates back to 1570. So it's not like from Jesus' time on. Like, it's changed since then. The extraordinary form, or the older form, was the new form then. So it's changed over the years. This wasn't like the end-all be-all that we completely changed and made people mad about. So they started doing the ordinary form in 1962. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people, parents, grandparents, that only knew the extraordinary form. Most of the Mass is in Latin, except for the homily. The hymns, the prayers, everything is in Latin. Like I said, I was trying to follow along. I took Latin in high school. I don't know enough to know what was going on. And then when the ordinary form came about, the Mass was said in the language of the area they were in. So here it's English in most places, not all places. If you're in a Spanish-speaking area, it's in Spanish. It's so that people can understand and know what's going on. It brings people into the Mass. The lay people are able to do the readings and that kind of thing, because I don't know about you, but I don't think I could do the readings in Latin. The priest faces away from the congregation, which it was different than I expected it to be. I knew that that was going to happen, but I thought that I was going to be able to hear the priest as he was facing the other direction. But really, you don't hear much of anything. He's just doing his thing. It's about God and the Eucharist and the gospel. It's not about having the congregation behind you involved, which I wasn't really a fan of. It was difficult because you can't follow along. I mean, unless you have a missal from 1962, which, I mean, you can get, and you can follow along. There were people following along, but for someone to just walk into Mass, and I'm picturing this back then, you don't know what's happening. No idea. So I read something about how and I remember now seeing it like in movies and things. People are in church and the little old ladies are in the front row saying the rosary while Mass is going on. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's terrible. Like, sure, you should be praying the Mass, but I don't know if during Mass is the right time to be saying the rosary. But I guess it made sense because you couldn't understand what was happening anyways. So, I mean, now knowing that that was why they said the rosary during Mass, it makes sense to me because it's hard to follow. So then when it comes time for communion, you walk to the front of the church. There's a kneeler on the altar. There's, I can't remember now, altar bars? Something. All the way across the end of the altar where people kneel, and then you take communion on your tongue. And then you get up and you go back to your seat. That was the first time I had taken communion on my tongue. And I had always thought about it, but I was a bit nervous to do it that way. Like at my church, where you can take it in your hand, I didn't have enough time to even freak out about it, so that was good. It was fine. I kind of felt like it was more reverent that way. Because there was the altar boy. There were a ton of altar boys, like 10 of them. And they kissed the priest's hand every time they touched him. I thought it was really cool. Because, you know, we hardly have any altar servers at my church anymore. So he held the little tray underneath you to make sure that nothing falls. Which I remember that from somewhere. But had never, like, been a part of it. There were incense everywhere, which I really like the incense. But, like, in our Masses, the incense are used a couple of times a year. I want to say the incense were used, like, 3 times in one Mass. I like that. I need to find out also, the bells rang more than twice. And then when I was talking to my deacon about it the other day, he was like, yeah, they ring the bells all the time. I need to figure out what all the bells are for. Does anyone know? If you do, tell me in the comments. There's also no sign of peace. There's no handshaking. Which I understand that there's that they're trying to make that less of a thing now, that it's become too much of like a chit chat in the middle of Mass before the Eucharist. I read something about it the other day, but yeah, I kind of understand that. But I like the sign of peace. But sometimes it does become a bit of a circus. So, all in all, I thought that the extraordinary form of Mass was beautiful. Am I going to go to that form every week? No, because I had already read the readings because we had done Renew the week before and all of that. I didn't feel like I got a whole lot out of it. The homily was fantastic. He tied everything in the readings together. We talked about the readings. It was great, but I didn't feel like I had that connection, I guess. And maybe it's just because it wasn't my church. I felt out of place. But it was definitely, I didn't feel like I got as much out of it as I do at my church. But I would go again for sure. I need my veil. And apparently now my mom needs a veil too, because she felt out of place. So yeah, it was gorgeous. And I felt like it was seeing a part of history, I guess. Like seeing, like, our religion is beautiful. And some of these traditions are going away. And I think it's really cool that we can go and, like, see them. And when I was talking to my deacon about it, there were a few other people there. And they were like, oh, I'd like to do that. Just for the nostalgia. But then I'll come back here. Because, like, that was what they grew up with. But they're big fans of the new Mass. One of our priests is also not a fan of the Latin Mass. The deacon was picking on him, saying, yeah, Father here, he wants to do Mass in Latin again. Father just looks at him like, no, I don't. I like English. So it was good. It was really good. So have you went to a Latin Mass? How's Lent going for you? Tell me about it in the comments. If you haven't already, subscribe, hit the little bell so you know when I'm putting videos out. I've talked for way too long already. I hope you guys are having a great Lent, and God bless you, and have a great, fantastic day.